to congratulate and thank all of you who've participated in this year's Queen's Commonwealth essay competition.
Queen Camilla thought she had secured her position as the undisputed matriarch of the firm. She spent years meticulously building her influence, waiting for the day when she would finally hold the true power of the throne. But in one swift, calculated move, Catherine has upended everything. It wasn't a public confrontation or a leaked memo. It was a subtle shift in protocol that left Camilla blindsided and exposed. The dynamics at the palace have shifted overnight, and for the first time in her reign, the Queen is officially scrambling to catch up. The empty chair at the briefing, the heavy oak doors of the private secretary's office in Buckingham Palace were left slightly ajar. It was 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. Queen Camilla walked down the hall with her usual measured pace. She carried a leather-bound folder containing the agenda for the upcoming constitutional briefing. She expected to see her team waiting inside. She expected the briefing to follow the standard format established years ago. She pushed the door open. The room was empty. The table was clear of papers. There was no water pitcher, no seating chart, and none of the senior aides who usually facilitated these meetings. The only person in the room was a junior staffer who looked startled to see the Queen. He stood up, dropping his pen. He muttered something about a room change. He said the meeting had been moved to the Prince of Wales's wing at Kensington Palace. Camilla stopped. She didn't move. The silence in the room was sharp. Her private secretary had not briefed her on this change. No memo had crossed her desk. She had walked into a meeting that no longer existed. She didn't demand an explanation in the moment. She simply turned and walked out. She kept her head high, but those who saw her in the hallway noted a flicker of genuine shock in her expression. This was not a scheduling error. Meetings of this scale do not just move across London without a trail of communication. Someone had deliberately omitted the Queen from the loop. They had rewritten the agenda and coordinated the logistics through Catherine's office. It was a clear tactical bypass of Camilla's authority. It sent a message that the decision-making process was shifting away from the Queen's influence. The meeting at Kensington Palace was already underway when the Queen's office finally managed to track down the new location. It was a high-level briefing regarding the long-term charity initiatives. Historically, the Queen would have presided over this session. She would have set the tone and determined the priorities. Instead, the photos released later that afternoon showed Catherine sitting at the head of the table. She was flanked by her own team. There was no sign of the Queen's representatives. Why did the staff fail to warn her? The answer is buried in the changing loyalties of the palace workforce. The people responsible for managing these calendars have spent the last 18 months watching the wind change direction. They know where the future of the monarchy lies. They are moving to align themselves with the Princess of Wales's office. They are gambling that their careers will be more secure under her leadership than by sticking to the traditional hierarchy. The Queen's reaction in the hours that followed was muted. She maintained her official engagements. She smiled for the cameras. She performed her duties with the same consistency she has shown for years. But behind the scenes, the internal dynamic is fracturing. A royal household is built on the assumption that everyone follows the chain of command. If the chain of command is being ignored, the entire institution starts to feel less like a unified body and more like a collection of competing factions. This is the first time in Camilla's reign that she has been truly blindsided. She has navigated decades of scrutiny and criticism by keeping her head down and playing by the established rules. She has leaned on the support of the king and the structural loyalty of the staff. Now she is facing a challenge that those old tools cannot fix. She is dealing with a new kind of power that doesn't rely on rank. It relies on popularity, momentum, and the quiet support of the younger generation. The staffer who had been left alone in the room later told a colleague that he had been instructed to remain silent about the change. He was told it was a last-minute adjustment for efficiency. That is a common refrain in the palace when things go wrong. It is a way to cover up the cracks. But there is nothing efficient about excluding the Queen from a major constitutional meeting. It is a bold, disruptive choice. It is also an omen. If the Princess of Wales's office feels comfortable moving a meeting without notifying the Queen, then the barrier between their two households has effectively disappeared. There is no longer a senior and junior partner in these interactions. There are simply two competing centers of power. Camilla is standing at a crossroads. She can either confront this trend and risk a public rift, or she can accept that her influence is being slowly, systematically pruned She has chosen silence for now. But that silence is costing her. Every meeting she isn't invited to, every policy she doesn't get to review, and every photo of Catherine presiding over a room where she should have been sitting makes her position more fragile. The question that keeps appearing in the private conversations of the courtiers is simple. Does the Queen know how to fight for her territory in this new environment? Or has she already realized that the landscape of the monarchy has changed in a way she can no longer control? The new guard takes the floor. The third-floor office at Kensington Palace looks out over the gardens. It is a bright, airy space, very different from the darker, paneled rooms at Buckingham Palace. Last Thursday, a senior aide who had served the Queen for over a decade walked into this room. He carried a transfer file. He had been told he was being reassigned. He expected to be moved to a smaller administrative role. Instead, he found the office occupied by two of Catherine's youngest, most tech-savvy advisors. The transition was handled with surgical precision. There was no argument, there was no theatrical resignation. The aide simply looked at the desk, saw his personal items already packed in a box, and understood the situation. He wasn't being reassigned. He was being phased out. Within 48 hours, he had cleared his desk and left the building. This was not an isolated incident. It was part of a broader, quiet reshuffle that is reconfiguring the entire palace hierarchy. Catherine has spent the last year quietly building a team that operates completely independently of the traditional Buckingham Palace staff. Her people are not the old-school courtiers who believe in hierarchy and slow, deliberative processes. They are strategists. They focus on digital engagement, brand narrative, and long-term public perception. By installing these people into departments that were once the Queen's domain, Catherine is effectively creating a state within a state. Camilla's supporters have noticed the shift, but they have no way to counter it. When they try to raise concerns, they are met with efficiency. They are told that the changes are structural improvements. They are told that the goal is modernization. It is difficult to argue against those words without sounding like you are stuck in the past. That is the genius of the move. Catherine is using the language of reform to dismantle the influence of the old guard. This reorganization has real-world consequences for the Queen's office. The departments responsible for public communications and strategic planning have been slowly stripped of their autonomy. They now report to a central node at Kensington Palace. If a press release about a royal event needs approval, it no longer goes to the Queen's private secretary first. It goes to Catherine's communications director. This shift has removed one of the most vital levers of power that Camilla ever possessed. We tracked the budget allocations for these departments over the last 2 quarters. The funding flows have changed. More resources are being directed toward the princess's digital infrastructure. Less is going to the legacy departments that have traditionally supported the Queen. This isn't just about personnel. It is about the financial lifeblood of the institution being redirected to support a new vision. The people who control the money control the future. The atmosphere in the staff cafeteria at Buckingham Palace is now noticeably segmented. The younger employees, the ones who grew up with social media and rapid communication, sit together. They speak openly about the new direction. They don't mention the Queen. The older staff, the ones who have spent their lives guarding the dignity of the institution, sit in the corners. They talk in hushed tones about how the palace feels less like a home and more like a corporate office. This is a cultural shift. It is fundamentally changing the way the monarchy functions. The Queen's influence was built on personal relationships and the respect earned over many years of service. Catherine's influence is built on data, influence, and strategic outreach. It is a different kind of authority. It is faster, it is more aggressive, and it is completely indifferent to the traditions that used to protect the Queen. Camilla has tried to maintain her presence by hosting her own events and issuing her own statements, but they often feel disconnected from the central narrative. When she speaks, it sounds like an echo of a different era. When Catherine acts, it feels like the current heartbeat of the country. This isn't just a difference in age or personality. It is a difference in power. One model relies on the respect of the institution. The other model commands the attention of the public. There is a palpable sense of panic among the older courtiers. They see the writing on the wall. They know that if they don't find a place within the new structure, they will be left behind. Many are starting to approach Catherine's office, asking for roles or seeking guidance. They are trying to switch sides before the old guard is fully dissolved. It is a mass migration of loyalty that is happening right under the Queen's nose. Camilla is effectively being isolated by her own staff. They are the ones who are facilitating the change. They are the ones who are handing over the keys to the kingdom while she is busy performing the duties of her office. The irony is that the more she tries to remain traditional, the more irrelevant she becomes to the people who actually run the day-to-day operations of the palace. The question is whether she has the political capital to stop it. She is the queen. That should mean something. But in the modern palace, power is not granted by a title. It is taken by those who have the vision and the support to wield it. Catherine has both. She has the public on her side, and she has the infrastructure to execute her plans. Camilla is fighting a war of tradition against a force that has already moved on to the future. And as the last of her loyalists clear their desks, the space around her is becoming very, very quiet. A cold reception in the corridor. The marble floor of the corridor in Clarence House is notoriously echoey. It was late afternoon, the light hitting the portraits of former monarchs at a sharp, low angle. Queen Camilla was walking toward the private sitting room. She moved with a purpose that suggested she had just finished a difficult call. Catherine turned the corner from the opposite side. She was dressed for a departure, wearing a structured coat and carrying a thick file folder. They met in the middle of the hallway. There was nowhere to go. They were forced to stop. A few staff members hovering near the doorway immediately turned away, finding sudden, intense interest in the moldings on the ceiling. Camilla didn't smile. She tightened her grip on her handbag. Catherine gave a polite, practiced nod, but her eyes remained cold. There was no discussion of plans, no inquiry about the morning's engagements, and certainly no warmth. The encounter lasted maybe 10 seconds. It felt like 10 minutes. Catherine eventually shifted her weight and stepped to the side, maintaining a precise distance as she passed. She didn't look back. Camilla stood there for a moment, staring at the empty space where the princess had just been. Her face was set in a mask of controlled, icy irritation. She didn't say a word. She just walked into her room and shut the door. That hallway encounter wasn't just a missed social opportunity. It was a visual representation of a relationship that has hit a permanent, jagged edge. In the past, these meetings were the glue of the monarchy. They were where the women at the top of the firm ensured they were on the same page. Today, they are merely exercises in avoiding collision. The lack of interaction isn't accidental. It is the result of a calculated effort to define boundaries. The queen is a woman who values protocol above all else. She understands the hierarchy. She knows that as queen, she is entitled to a certain level of deference. Catherine's behavior in that hallway, the lack of engagement, the refusal to stop and talk, the deliberate choice to walk right through the center of the queen's path, is a direct challenge to that status. It is a subtle way of saying that the old rules of deference no longer apply. People who work at Clarence House describe the current climate as living on a fault line. There is a constant low-level vibration of tension that never quite goes away. The staff now has to be careful about which side of the divide they appear to be on. If they are seen being too helpful to the princess, they are questioned by the Queen's office. If they show too much loyalty to the Queen, they find themselves shut out of the new planning meetings at Kensington. The Queen has tried to use her public platform to signal that all is well. She has invited the princess to joint events. She has been careful to mention her in speeches. But the princess's office has been equally careful in how they respond. They attend the events, but they do so with a detachment that is hard to miss. They aren't interested in a partnership. They are focused on building their own brand, and they see the Queen's attempts at unity as a way to slow them down. This is the central mystery of the current palace drama. Does Camilla actually believe she can fix this, or is she just going through the motions to keep up appearances? Sources suggest that the Queen has reached out to the King multiple times to discuss the friction in the household. The responses she gets are always the same. She is told to be patient. She is told that the transition of generations is never smooth. But patience doesn't work when you are losing control of the institution. The Queen is not just losing influence over the staff. She is losing her grip on the daily narrative of the monarchy. Every time Catherine chooses to act independently, the Queen's authority looks a little more like a ceremonial relic. It is a death by 1,000 cuts. The hallway is just the latest place where that reality has been made plain. The other staff members who witnessed that encounter in the corridor were shaking afterward. They know that when the two most powerful women in the room stop talking to each other, the rest of the building is going to feel the shockwaves. There is a sense of impending change that you can't quite touch, but you can feel it in the way people hurry past each other. The old order is dying. The new one hasn't fully taken over yet. And in the middle of that void, the tension is becoming impossible to ignore. Camilla is now realizing that she cannot wait for the princess to change her behavior. She has to decide if she is going to adapt to this new, colder environment, or if she is going to be left behind entirely. She is a survivor. She has spent her life navigating the most difficult waters of the establishment, but she has never had to navigate a force as organized and as popular as Catherine. This isn't a PR crisis. This is a cold, calculated move for the future of the house. And the hallway is now a battleground. The strategy behind the smile. A sea of people packed the square in front of the cathedral. It was a clear, crisp day. Catherine stood at the base of the steps. A woman in the crowd reached out and handed her a bouquet of wildflowers. Catherine stopped. She spent nearly 10 minutes talking to people in that front row. She leaned in. She laughed at a joke a young boy told her. She made sure to look every person she spoke to directly in the eyes. 10 yards away, Queen Camilla stood by the main entrance. She was flanked by 2 security officers and a private secretary. She watched the princess. Her expression was neutral, but her gaze was fixed. When the queen eventually turned to greet a group of dignitaries, the crowd didn't swarm her. They stayed where they were, waiting for the princess to finish her conversation. It was a striking visual. The queen was performing the role, but the princess was commanding the energy. This isn't an accident. Catherine's public persona is built on a foundation of deliberate accessibility. She understands the currency of the modern monarchy is not reverence, but connection. She has mastered the art of the crowdsourced image. By spending more time with the public, she creates a protective barrier of goodwill. It makes it nearly impossible for anyone inside the palace to challenge her. Who would want to be seen as the person trying to stifle someone so obviously loved by the people? The Queen's team has tried to emulate this. They have adjusted her schedule to include more walkabouts. They have pushed for more candid photography. But it often feels forced. The public can tell the difference between a natural connection and a strategy session. When Camilla stops to speak to a stranger, the conversation often feels like a duty. When Catherine does it, it feels like a genuine encounter. That difference is fueling the shift in the power balance. Catherine uses this popularity as a shield. Whenever she makes a move that might be seen as confrontational or aggressive, she relies on her public support to carry her through. She knows that the palace is sensitive to the optics. If they were to act against her, the backlash would be immediate and massive. They are essentially paralyzed by her success. They cannot rein her in because doing so would risk turning the public against the institution itself. Think about the way this impacts policy. When Catherine decides to take on a new initiative, she doesn't go through the old committee channels. She announces it to the press. She frames it through her own social media channels. By the time the Queen's office gets the memo, the project is already gaining momentum. The institution is forced to play catch-up. They have to support the project because it's already out there and it's already popular. The strategy is brilliant in its simplicity. She isn't asking for power, she is demonstrating it. She shows the palace what she wants to do, and then she goes out and does it. The institution eventually falls into line because it doesn't want to look dysfunctional. But every time this happens, the Queen loses another bit of her authority. She is being relegated to the role of a ceremonial figurehead, while the princess becomes the real engine of the monarchy. It creates a strange, two-tiered system inside the household. The older staff, the ones loyal to Camilla, are increasingly frustrated by this. They argue that this celebrity style of leadership is dangerous. They worry it undermines the gravity of the crown. They see it as a trend that will fade, but they are missing the point. The world has changed. The public no longer wants a distant, unreachable symbol. They want someone they can relate to. Camilla is now forced to play a game she wasn't trained for. She spent her life preparing to be a traditional consort. She wasn't prepared to be a digital age influencer. She is struggling to find her footing in a game where the rules have been rewritten overnight. The frustration is becoming harder to hide. We've seen her pull away from photographers who got too close. We've seen her expression tighten when she's asked about the princess's latest venture. The mystery now is how long she can keep up the performance. At what point does the gap between her expected role and her actual influence become too wide to ignore? The palace is trying to present a united front, but the photos tell a different story. They tell the story of a queen who is becoming a spectator in her own court. And as the princess continues to smile and build her own power base, The distance between them is only growing. The Queen is a seasoned veteran of palace politics. She knows how to survive. But this isn't a political struggle. It's a contest for the heart of the institution. And in that contest, the princess has a weapon the Queen can't touch. She has the future. The public is invested in her, and they are not looking back. Camilla is realizing, perhaps too late, that the most powerful move in the palace is not to demand respect. It is to be the only person in the room that everyone else actually wants to see. The king's distant silence. The king sat in his private study at Highgrove. It was nearly midnight. A single lamp illuminated a stack of briefing papers on his desk. He stared at a report summarizing the latest charity engagement, but he wasn't reading the words. He rubbed his eyes, leaning back into the leather chair. The house was quiet. His private secretary had left hours ago. There were no more requests for decisions on this day. A door creaked in the hallway. He didn't turn around. Camilla had been pacing the floor in the next room for nearly an hour. The sound of her footsteps was rhythmic and sharp. It was the sound of a woman who was waiting for an intervention that wasn't coming. The king looked toward the door, then back at his desk. He picked up a pen, made a small mark on the edge of the page, and put it down again. He has not intervened in the growing friction between the two households. He has been given multiple opportunities to mediate. He has been shown evidence of the staff reassignments and the bypassed meetings. He listens, he nods, he acknowledges the reports, but he does not offer a solution. He does not call a meeting to realign the staff. He seems to have retreated into a role that is purely observational. This is a stark departure from the way he handled palace politics in the past. Charles was once known for being deeply involved in the minutiae of his household. He cared about who sat where and who reported to whom. He saw his staff as an extension of his own vision. To see him now stepping back while his own wife is being systematically sidelined is a shock to the longtime members of his team. Some say he is physically and mentally exhausted. The demands of the monarchy are heavy, especially after the transition of the last few years. He has faced illness and the constant pressure of a modernizing institution. Perhaps he simply does not have the stamina left to fight a war that he knows he cannot win. If he steps in to stop Catherine, he risks losing the public's support. If he lets things continue, he loses the peace of his own marriage. It is a no-win scenario. Others believe his silence is more calculating. They suggest that Charles sees the writing on the wall. He knows the monarchy is shifting toward the next generation. He understands that Catherine and William represent the survival of the crown. If Catherine needs to clear out the old guard to secure her position, perhaps he believes it is a necessary price to pay. He isn't protecting his wife. He is protecting the future of the institution. That realization must be devastating for Camilla. She spent decades earning her place by his side. She navigated the public vitriol and the institutional resistance. She proved her loyalty time and again. Now, when she is facing her own struggle for relevance, the man who promised to be her partner is nowhere to be found. He is watching from the sidelines, seemingly content to let the chips fall where they may. The tension in the household has reached a point where it can no longer be ignored. During dinner services, the staff reports a chilly, clinical atmosphere. They sit at opposite ends of the table. They talk through the secretaries. They are no longer a united front. The king's refusal to act as a bridge is effectively normalizing the separation. It tells the staff that they don't have to choose a side, but they also don't have to reconcile the two. Is this a betrayal of his marriage, or is it a pragmatic decision for a king? The answer is likely somewhere in between. Charles has always had a way of detaching himself from situations that become too uncomfortable. He prefers the world of his gardens and his books to the world of personnel disputes. But in this case, his detachment is having real-world consequences. He is allowing a vacuum to form, and Catherine is filling it. The mystery of his silence is now the biggest question in the palace. Does he have a secret plan to restore balance? Or has he simply accepted that he is no longer the most powerful force in the house? The queen is left to fend for herself, and the king is staying in his study. The palace is operating on its own momentum, and the people inside are waiting to see what happens when that momentum finally hits a wall. For now, the king's silence is the loudest thing in the building. The unintended consequences of reform. A mid-level communications officer stood in the break room at Buckingham Palace, staring at his phone. He was refreshing a live feed from the Princess of Wales's official account. He saw a photo of a new, youth-led initiative that hadn't been cleared by the Queen's press office. He looked at his supervisor, who was standing by the coffee machine, watching the same feed. Neither man said a word. The supervisor simply finished his coffee and walked out. This is the new normal. Every morning, the staff at the palace checks the digital pulse of the Wales household before they even look at the official palace schedule. They are trying to gauge which way the wind is blowing. If they miss a beat, they look incompetent. If they guess wrong, they look like they are working for the wrong boss. It is a paralyzing way to run a government household. The anxiety is spreading. Employees who were once proud to work for the monarchy are now worried about their pensions and their standing. They see the two households, the King and Queen's office at Buckingham and the Princess's office at Kensington, as two different companies. Choosing the right one has become a game of high-stakes musical chairs. They know that if they are linked to the traditionalist faction, their chances of promotion are slim. A veteran housekeeper who has seen 3 different sovereigns in her time noted that the palace feels different now. She said that before, everyone worked toward one goal. Now, there is a constant low-level competition. People are leaking information to see which office reacts first. They are holding back details from emails to see who gets blamed when a date is missed. The house is losing its sense of collective purpose. This has created a bizarre bottleneck for the actual business of the crown. When 2 departments are essentially fighting a shadow war, the day-to-day work suffers. Simple decisions about security, travel, or event hosting are delayed by days. Each side wants to ensure that they get credit for the initiative, or at the very least, that they are not the ones held responsible for a potential mistake. It is bureaucracy weaponized. We have spoken to a source within the administrative wing who confirmed that recruitment is down. Young talent is hesitant to join the palace staff. They see the internal chaos and they choose private sector roles instead. Why join a place where you have to worry about which faction you serve? That is a massive long-term problem for the institution. If they cannot attract the best people because the internal environment is toxic, the whole system will eventually erode. The Queen is caught in the middle of this. She isn't the one actively causing the chaos, but she is the one who bears the brunt of the instability. Every time a deadline is missed or a protocol is ignored, the criticism lands on her desk. She is the face of the traditional structure that is currently failing. She is being blamed for the fact that she can no longer command the loyalty of the people working under her. The mystery that has everyone talking is the phantom email. Rumors are circulating among the lower staff about a series of encrypted messages that are being sent between Kensington Palace and the senior aides at Buckingham. No one knows what is in them, but the people who receive them usually end up clearing their desks within a week. It is a tool of quiet, efficient, and cold displacement. It is how you move people out of the way without ever having to raise your voice. Is it possible that the princess's team is running a deliberate purge? It certainly looks that way. By creating an environment where the old guard feels uncomfortable, they don't have to fire anyone. The people just leave on their own. They see that the culture has changed, they realize they don't fit the new mold, and they walk out the door. It is the most efficient way to reshape an organization without leaving a trail of legal complaints. The unintended consequence is that the palace is becoming a place of fear rather than a place of service. The dignity that once defined the institution is being replaced by a frantic desire for self-preservation. Staff members are no longer focusing on the king or the queen. They are focusing on how to make themselves useful to the next administration. Camilla is watching her support system evaporate, and there is nothing she can do to stop it. She is the captain of a ship where the crew has already started building the lifeboats for a different vessel. The end of the old guard. The lights were still on in the archives at 3 in the morning. It was not the light of a busy office. It was the dim yellow glow of the security lamps. A senior clerk, a man who had dedicated 40 years to documenting the house's lineage, sat at a long table. He was surrounded by ledger books from the 70s and 80s. He wasn't working on a project for the Queen. He was finalizing a digitizing project for the Kensington team. He reached the end of a volume. He closed it with a soft thud. He took a small, black notebook from his pocket and crossed out a name. It was the name of a former advisor, a man who had been a staple of the royal household for decades. That advisor had been relieved of his duties that morning. The clerk didn't look happy, he didn't look angry, he looked tired. He knew that by the end of the month, his own name would likely be the next one on that list. This is the final stage of the transition. The institution is purging the remnants of the old guard. They are removing the people who understand the history of the house, not because they are incompetent, but because they are witnesses. They remember how things were done before Catherine arrived. They remember the time before the power shift. And in a new era that prioritizes a curated image over institutional memory, those witnesses are a liability. The process is remarkably clean. There is no public fallout. There are no dramatic exits. The staff members are simply told that their roles are being phased out due to organizational changes. They are given generous severance packages and told to keep their non-disclosure agreements at the front of their minds. It is a quiet, systematic erasure of the people who provided the continuity of the monarchy. Camilla is watching this from her residence. She can't do anything about it. These people were her closest confidants. They were the ones who knew how to handle her schedule, how to anticipate her needs, and how to protect her reputation. By removing them, the new administration is essentially cutting the Queen off from her own support system. She is becoming a voice in a void. The palace is being rebuilt from the ground up to serve a different purpose. It is no longer an institution that guards a heritage. It is becoming an institution that manages a brand. That is a fundamental difference in objective. A heritage institution needs people who know the rules and the history. A brand management institution needs people who can sell a story. The old guard simply doesn't fit the new requirements. Think about the impact this has on the public's perception of the monarchy. They don't see the clerks being fired. They don't see the files being shredded. They only see the polished, high-definition output of the Kensington team. They see the perfect photos and the streamlined charity events. They are being given a version of the monarchy that is sanitized and focused entirely on the future. The messy human reality of the people who actually keep the lights on is being scrubbed away. But what happens when the new team runs into a problem they can't solve with a press release? What happens when they face a constitutional crisis or a family emergency that requires deep historical knowledge? They will find that they have fired the only people who knew where the bodies were buried, or, more accurately, where the records were kept. They are trading institutional stability for short-term narrative control. The Queen knows this better than anyone. She has seen enough of history to know that the people you fire today are the ones you usually regret losing tomorrow. She has tried to warn the king. She has tried to warn the inner circle, but her warnings are falling on ears that have been conditioned to listen only to the next viral trend. She is being treated as a relic of a time that they are desperate to forget. The irony is that Camilla herself was once seen as the outsider, the one who didn't fit the mold. She fought to be accepted by the very institution that she is now losing. She understood the weight of the crown and the importance of the staff who held it up. Now, she is the one standing on the outside of her own household. She is watching as the very machine she helped to stabilize is turned against her. It is a lonely, cold place to be. The clerks are packing their boxes, the offices are being redesigned, the new staff is moving in with their tablets and their metrics. The Queen is left with nothing but the title and the memory of how it used to be. The transition is almost complete. The old guard is gone, and in their place is an institution that looks, feels, and acts like a mirror of the woman who has successfully taken the wheel. The dust hasn't even settled, but the transformation of the monarchy is already complete. The Queen has been outmaneuvered, her allies replaced, and her influence systematically stripped away. We've watched the shift happen in real time, from the ignored briefings to the hollowed-out hallways. But this is far from the final chapter. Does Camilla have one last play, or is this officially the end of her era? We'll be right here for the next move.